Alright, we are all together for Simon's birthday. We had ourselves a little casual modern tournament, and Garrett won with a Rakdos mid-range deck, but it's probably not the kind of list you're thinking of.
Yeah, so Rakdos mid-range kind of, but with a twist that you'll see here shortly. This was a little lower power modern tournament, so it's not, completely nuts. Lands, not really important. Black and red mana producing. Here's the creatures. So for Vampire of the Dire Moon, it's a 1/1 Death Touch lifelink for 1 black. And here's your theme. This is a Rakdos Vampires deck. Another 1-drop we have in here is Vampire Cutthroat. This has Skulk and lifelink, and it's a 1/1 for 1 black. This also was really helpful in a lot of games, just being able to get essentially unblockable damage through and gain life back. Really puts you ahead a little bit. Also for Gifted Aetherborn, this is another vampire. This is a 2/3 Death Touch lifelinker for 2 black. Basically just the big brother to Vampire of the Dire Moon. But that Death Touch is really helpful both offensively and defensively. Also running 2 Croxa. This is a fairly cheap card now, so good inclusion here. It just helps provide a little value. I only escaped it maybe once or twice, but the card discard effect when it hits the battlefield and the potential burn off of the discard is still pretty decent. This was a common side out, but 3 Vampire Socialite. This puts +1/+1 counters on your other vampires as long as an opponent lost life on the turn that either this comes down or that you play vampires after that. This can actually get out of hand pretty quickly if you have a pretty good sized board, and this definitely helps turn the tide in some cases. For Stormkirk Captain, this is probably my favorite card. The first strike and +1/+1 that it gives, and it has first strike itself, is just can be really backbreaking, especially with the Death Touch. In here, First Strike Death Touch is really hard for a lot of decks to deal with. And then finally, kind of the boss of the deck, Vampire Nocturnus. This gives your vampires +2/+1 and flying as long as the top card of your library is black and you play with that card revealed, so it's public knowledge. When this comes down, a lot of times it's just game over if you get that hit off the top of your deck. In the main deck, at least, there are no non-black cards besides lands, so as long as the top card of the library is a non-land, this is live and putting a ton of pressure on your opponent. That's it for the creatures. Move on to the spells. Here's this is budget 4 Thoughtseize, which is actually 2 Thoughtseize and 2 Inquisition of Kozilek. Obviously, we all know these cards, what they do. The one black mana discard, look at your opponent's hand, is very powerful. I have 2 Sign in Blood in the main deck. One of the weaknesses in this deck is kind of just committing your hand to the board and not being able to refill it. So if you can get to one of these Sign in Bloods, you can trade 1 card for 2, not too bad. And then for Terminate in the main deck, this is just really good creature removal for just a black and a red. This is just very versatile, lets you deal with a lot of different threats. And finally, for the main deck, it's for Kulligan's Command. This was actually kind of the MVP in this tournament. I would say it's so versatile with the modes that you can choose from it. You put a creature from your graveyard back into your hand, you can make an opponent discard a card, destroy an artifact, deal 2 damage to target creature or player. The choices, the versatility is just really there. I definitely use the recycling of creatures from my own graveyard a lot, and if you keep bringing back, especially those like Death Touch lifelinkers, like that your opponent had to commit so much to getting rid of once, you bring it back and then they have to do it again. The fact that this is an instant also is just really incredible. So this was probably the MVP card for me.
What's the ratio of red to black in your mana base?
Pretty low red. So for basics, we have 7 swamp, 3 mountain, and then everything else is either a land that can produce both. Here, that's what these are, or it's a fetch land that can go get a swamp or a mountain in the case of the Bloodstained Mire. Sideboard really quick. 4 lightning bolt. I thought this would come in handy more than it did, so I didn't end up putting it in that much. Just didn't need it with the matchups that I was seeing. But again, just 1 mana, very low to the ground, removal. A braid, 4 of those. It's a worse lightning bolt in some ways, and it's better than lightning bolt in other ways. The destroy target artifact was actually really helpful, so that came in handy a lot. You'll notice that these are mono red cards here, so these don't actually work with Vampire Nocturnus. Usually if I was putting in a good amount of these, I was taking out at least one of the Vampire Nocturnus, because Vampire Nocturnus, if you're not hitting that card off the top of your library, is not great. It's just a 3/3 for 4. But it's so good that you have to, of course, plan for it in the main deck, and then if I was siding in too much red, I would just kind of adjust the number of Vampire Nocturnus, respectively. Malakir Blood Witch, this is a 4/4 for 5 that has flying and protection from white. The protection from white, I thought, could have come in handy. It never really did, so probably wouldn't put this in the sideboard again, but... And then 2, here's another Vampire, Gatekeeper of Malakir. This is a 2/2 for 2, but you can kick it for an additional black mana, and when it's kicked, target player sacrifices a creature. This actually did come in handy because it's that good non-targeting removal. If an opponent has a lot of creatures, then they're usually just sacrificing something weak, but I played this multiple times when an opponent only had 1 creature, and they had no choice but to get rid of that one when you put this in, and then you get a body as well for that removal. And then finally, it's 2 Field of Ruin and 1 Demolition Field. These are just non-basic land destroyers. This was not super great in this tournament just because this was a little bit lower power, like I said, so there's not a lot of crazy stuff going on where you feel like you really need to be hitting a lot of non-basic lands. But yeah, overall the deck played pretty well. I think being low to the ground really helps. Like, there's basically never a time where you're going to draw something in this deck in that kind of mid-range part of the game and not be immediately able to cast that and capitalize on it. And I will definitely say that all of the lifelink that's in here from the Vampires was really helpful too. You might, even if you start off a little slow and get down in the life game, you can scrap your way back very efficiently and get back up to get back ahead of the opponent and close it out from there. So yeah, Rakdos mid-range Vampires. This is a lot of fun to play. Yeah, that's it. Later.